Hey everyone, welcome back to Steve's View. Today, we're diving into a story that's shaking up not only Latin America, but also Washington, D.C. For the past few weeks, satellite images, flight trackers, and media reports have all pointed to one thing. The United States has been quietly moving warships, surveillance planes, and Marines near Venezuela's coastline. And all this comes as President Trump has once again called Venezuelan leader Nicolas Maduro a narco-dictator poisoning America for profit. So, the question everyone's asking is America preparing for war with Venezuela? Or is this just the next chapter in Trump's war, not against a country, but against the global drug trade that's killing tens of thousands of Americans every single year? Let's break this down, step by step. Let's start with the brutal truth. Drug trafficking isn't just crime. It's one of the most profitable industries on Earth. A single kilogram of cocaine costs around $1,500 when it leaves a processing lab in Colombia. Once it crosses into Venezuela and makes its way north, that same kilo sells for around $30,000 wholesale. And when it finally hits the streets of Miami, New York, or Los Angeles, cut, mixed, and distributed, its retail value can exceed $150,000. That's a 70 times markup from jungle to city. For perspective, that's a profit margin Wall Street could only dream of. Now imagine you're in a country like Venezuela, a place where the economy has collapsed. The local currency is worth less than monopoly money, and soldiers are earning less than $10 a month. In that world, cocaine becomes more than just a drug. It becomes a currency, a survival mechanism, a shadow economy, and for those in power, a tool of control. For years, Venezuela was South America's richest nation, sitting on the world's largest oil reserves. But decades of corruption, socialism, and mismanagement turned it into an economic wasteland. When hyperinflation hit, reaching over 1,000,000% at one point, entire institutions crumbled. People couldn't buy food, hospitals ran out of medicine, and the National Army, once a proud institution, became the only functioning force left. And when the military becomes the last pillar of a failed state, it doesn't take long before that army starts running the black market. That's where the so-called Cartel de los Soles, or Cartel of the Suns, comes in, named after the golden sun badges worn by Venezuelan generals. According to U.S. and Colombian intelligence, this network includes high-ranking officers, border guards, pilots, and even intelligence officials who've turned Venezuela into a major transshipment hub for cocaine headed to the United States. And here's the most alarming part. This isn't a secret. Everyone knows it, from the lowest soldier on the border to the generals in Caracas. But the government tolerates it, even depends on it. Why? Because in Maduro's Venezuela, loyalty matters more than law. As long as the generals keep the regime alive, the regime looks the other way. So instead of fighting the drug trade, the Venezuelan state has, in many ways, become fused with it. It's not a conspiracy theory anymore. It's a survival mechanism for a dictatorship that's running out of everything except cocaine and guns. Now, let's connect this back home. Because the drugs leaving Venezuela don't just the result. Over 12,000 Americans die each year directly from cocaine overdoses. And when you factor in synthetic opioids like fentanyl, often mixed with cocaine, the number skyrockets to over 100,000 overdose deaths a year. That's more than the total number of U.S. soldiers killed in Vietnam, Iraq, and Afghanistan combined every single year. Think about that. Entire towns across the Midwest have been wiped out, families destroyed, and children orphaned, not because of bombs or terrorism, but because of white powder shipped through a corrupt Latin American military pipeline. So when Trump says, this is not just about drugs, it's about defending our people, he's not entirely wrong. The United States has been fighting drugs for over 50 years. From Nixon's war on drugs, to Reagan's Just Say No, to Bush's Plan Colombia. Trillions of dollars have been spent, yet cocaine remains as common as ever. Why? Because the system never punished the people who made it possible. According to a RAND study, only 1 in 4 drug traffickers ever gets caught. And even when they do, most serve 5 to 6 years in prison, barely a slap on the wrist for organizations moving billions. Worse, in Venezuela, some convicted traffickers have been released early or even financially compensated by the regime for helping maintain national stability. It's insanity. Meanwhile, every American taxpayer foots the bill in the form of broken communities, border chaos, and lost lives. So, Trump looked at this situation and said what most presidents never dared to say: enough. Words don't scare cartels, missiles do. In early September, reports emerged of U.S. Navy ships deploying to the Caribbean under Operation Clean Wave. At first, the Pentagon called it a counter-narcotics operation, but soon it became clear this was something much bigger. Here's what's been confirmed. 1 carrier strike group operating near Puerto Rico. At least 8 littoral combat and patrol ships positioned along Venezuela's northern waters. U.S. Marines stationed in Curacao and Trinidad for regional security. Surveillance drones, AWACS aircraft, and Coast Guard interceptors covering key smuggling routes. And then came the moment that changed everything. A small vessel leaving a Venezuelan port was identified by U.S. intelligence as a major drug transport ship. When the vessel ignored repeated warnings to stop, an American destroyer fired a precision missile, and the ship was obliterated. 11 smugglers were killed instantly. The White House confirmed the strike, and Trump himself said in a press conference, "We're done sending warnings. From now on, if you ship poison to America, we'll send missiles, not memos." The message was unmistakable. This wasn't the old war on drugs. This was deterrence through firepower. And for the first time in decades, the cartels actually seemed afraid. Let's be honest. What Trump did is controversial. Using military force in foreign waters always raises questions of legality, sovereignty, and escalation. But here's the counterpoint. When diplomacy fails, when law enforcement fails, when your citizens are dying by the tens of thousands every year, how long can you afford to play nice? For years, Washington tried cooperation. It failed. They tried sanctions. They failed. They tried indictments. Maduro laughed. So Trump decided to try something else, something the cartels actually understand: consequences. You don't reason with people who move 200 tons of cocaine a year. You make them afraid to touch the ocean. So yes, morally and strategically, Trump was right. A government that profits from poisoning your people forfeits the right to hide behind sovereignty. Still, there's a bigger question we can't ignore. If the U.S. is deploying a full naval task force, if missiles are flying over the Caribbean, is this still just a drug operation? Or are we looking at the first stage of a war? Let's be clear. Trump has not declared war on Venezuela. There's no invasion order, no troop buildup on land. What he has done is send a message, both to Caracas and to the rest of the world, that America is done tolerating state-sponsored crime. But Trump's rhetoric has definitely turned up the heat. He's called Maduro a narco-dictator, a thug destroying democracy, a man who poisons America for profit. He's also said, Maduro's regime is not a government. It's a drug cartel wearing uniforms. That's not diplomatic language. That's the language you use before you pull the trigger. So yes, tensions are high. And when you park a carrier group 100 miles off a dictator's coast, you're not just fighting drug boats anymore. You're playing with the psychology of war. But Trump isn't reckless. If anything, this operation shows he's learned from history. He knows Iraq, Afghanistan, Libya, all started as limited operations. He knows Americans don't want another endless war. So what he's doing now, looks more like kinetic diplomacy, using military action not to occupy, but to pressure. By hitting drug shipments, freezing assets, and scaring corrupt generals, he's trying to split the Venezuelan elite from within, to make them realize that siding with Maduro is no longer profitable or safe. And guess what? It might actually work. Reports already suggest some mid-level officers are reaching out to U.S. intermediaries, offering intelligence in exchange for protection. If that's true, Trump might be achieving what no one else could, undermining the regime without a single soldier stepping on Venezuelan soil. Of course, nothing in Latin America is simple. Maduro still has the backing of Russia, China, and Iran, all of whom have interests in Venezuelan oil and military access. If U.S. military pressure keeps escalating, those countries could respond with their own naval support missions. So while a direct war may not be imminent, the Caribbean could quickly turn into another geopolitical chessboard, one where every move has global consequences. But let's not lose sight of the core issue. This all started because a regime let its generals get rich off drugs, and those drugs are killing Americans. When you strip away the politics, that's the tragedy and the justification of this entire story. So, is America going to war with Venezuela? Not exactly. At least, not yet. But make no mistake, Trump has redefined what war means. It's no longer just soldiers and flags. It's about using force to defend your people from threats that wear no uniforms. Cartels, traffickers, corrupt regimes hiding behind national borders. You can call it bold, you can call it dangerous, but it's hard to call it wrong, because after decades of watching drugs flow freely while politicians gave speeches, someone finally decided to stop talking and start acting. Maybe for once, that's what justice looks like. If you found this video informative, make sure to hit the like button, share it with your friends, and subscribe for more deep dive analysis. I'm Steve. Thanks for watching. See you next time.